hope you'll put your hands together and join me in welcoming her to our
Thank you, Barbara. Well, that sounds like that's a little bit older bio. I am currently serving on the Public Health Committee, the Transportation Committee, the Local and Consent Committee. Last session I served on the Appropriations Committee. My first session is when I did criminal jurisprudence, which was, oh no, that's okay. Because I think I hear variations of it everywhere. That's why it just gives me more time to talk about it. Done. Anyway, but I appreciate y'all having me here today. For those, I see a couple people in here who know me, but for those who don't, I thought I'd just share a little bit about myself and how I got involved in politics. I think I often get told that. I'm in my fourth term in the House. As Barbara mentioned, I was elected in 2010. And for those that don't know, this is a part-time job. So if you talk to somebody that's either a state senator or a state representative, we get paid a big $600 a month, and that's fine. Do it when I went in. After taxes, it's about $380. But we're here to serve you. So if you're serving as a state legislature, you're either retired, you're rich, or you have another job. I'm not retired or rich, so that gives you a clue. I am currently a commercial realtor. We sold our subways about 4 years ago. My business partner and I did. He was wanting to move on to bigger and better things, and I didn't want to borrow a ton of money to buy them out, so we just sold them. But it was a great experience for me. I think running a small business and running a household, for all of you ladies in here, really gives you some practice for doing budgets for the state of Texas, because you get a bigger grasp of how that works. My husband and I have lived in this district for over 30 years. We have 3 kids. We've raised them all here. We have 4 grandkids. Unfortunately, one of my grandkids lives in Santa Monica. I keep trying to get her home. But, and we have always been active in the community and in our church. And I've had businesses in the district, as I mentioned. So I know this district well. A little bit of background. My husband and I were high school sweethearts. We got married when I was 17. I know usually people go, "You're still married?" Yes. We have been married 42 years. And we still love each other. More importantly, we still like each other and respect each other. He's very supportive of me doing this, and whether you're a man or a woman, I have found that any type of public office, and you know this, you have to have your spouse supporting you, because it takes a ton of time away from your business life and your personal life. Needless to say, getting married at the age of 17, I didn't go to college right out of school. I share that because many times in my working career, I was a legal secretary for years. I was applying for getting promoted, or there'd be a job coming up and I knew I could do it. And even more so, my supervisor knew I could do it. But the policy was you had to have a degree. You know, our futures are really shaped on decisions we make along the way, and I could have simply bemoaned the fact, you know, I can do that job. You won't give me that job because I don't have that piece of paper. I could have taken that route, or I could have just said, you know what, I'm a Texas woman, and if you put a roadblock in front of me, I'm going to turn it into a building block, and I'm going to move around it. So what I ended up doing was I went back to school. And my husband and I's budget did not allow for me just to quit my job and go back to school, so I worked full-time during the day, and I went to school at night. I often would be seen at my son's baseball games, sitting in the bleachers with a textbook on my lap, and you teachers may or may not appreciate that. But it was what we had to do to get me through that time. During that time, one of my professors suggested that I apply for an internship with one of my elected officials because he knew I was interested in policy. And that led to an internship with Senator Bob Dole. And eventually, after graduation, I had a permanent position with him, a position on his staff. While working on my degree, I also did an internship at in Washington, D.C., working on the Hill with the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors. That's a mouthful. And 8 years after I started school, I graduated summa cum laude with a degree with a major in political science and a minor in business. I have 2 brothers that are mentally ill, and what does that have to do with this, I'm sure you're thinking, but watching my mom deal with that over the years and all the red tape involved with getting them help and services, I felt like there had to be a better way to do it. And I'm not the type, and if you are, congratulations, I'm not the type to pick up a sign and go pick it. I'm more the one that's going to look and say, how do we change this? What do we do? And so as I looked at how she had to deal with things, I started understanding that for me to make changes into the policy, I was going to have to understand the politics involved. And so I started volunteering at the Dallas County Republican Party's office and volunteered for candidates that agreed with things that I agreed with. And that's how I really got involved with that. During that time, I also was asked to run for a position on the State Republican Executive Committee. I don't know how many people are into politics here, but both parties have an executive committee. That's the Republican one. And so I ran for that, and I represented Senate District 2 for 2 terms. That's 4 years. And after that, the House district that I now represent had gone to a Democrat during the Obama swing. And I had several friends approach me, ask me if I'd consider running. And excuse me, after a 3-way primary of the year's November election, I'm glad to say that I took that seat. So people are asking me why I'm running for Senate District 2. I've been in the House 4 terms. I feel like I've been very successful there. I finally got a chair this last time around. And you are rewarded if you work really hard. And so it was a hard decision for me. But I had a lot of, it was really a grassroots recruitment. I had a lot of, can you all hear me okay in the back? Yes. If you can't wave at me, my husband tells me when I start getting real intense, my voice goes down. So just wave at me. But this some of it has good acoustics. But it was really a grassroots recruitment. I had a lot of people, interestingly enough, that had supported my opponent in the last election come up to me about a year and a half ago saying, have you ever thought about running for Senate? I said, no, really haven't. Would you? And I said, well, you know, I'm really comfortable with what I'm doing. I really like what I'm doing over here. And I thought you supported the current senator. Well, it's not, we're not getting what we thought. We're not seeing what we thought. I heard this over and over. First, it was just from a few people scattered here and there, and not just in my House district, but throughout the Senate. And then it was from the business community, and then finally the education community. And I go to church with a ton of educators, y'all. And I actually, my dad was a professor at what is now Texas State University. It used to be Southwestern Texas State University. I have an aunt that was a librarian for years and years. So I listen to those guys. I can't empathize because I haven't done it. But I want to be able to hear you and listen to you. But what I heard more than anything was that they were looking for someone that would listen to their constituents, somebody that would be responsive, and somebody that's effective. Now, I believe these are all characteristics that I've demonstrated. I make a concentrated effort to meet and discuss issues with everybody in my district, with all of my constituents, even those with philosophical differences. Matter of fact, I have found that you can glean really good information by talking with somebody that may think differently than you. And it's good information that you can effectively use on different issues, possibly. So I've always had an open door. As a matter of fact, a majority of the bills that I filed this last session were bills that I got from constituents, from elected officials, from my superintendents, from people I actually met at the doors last time around when I was knocking on doors and talking with them. I think it's very important. I think my effectiveness is proven in the fact that I've passed 30 of the bills that I've authored in my 4 terms. Now, if you factor in Senate companion bills, I don't know if you know how this works. You got a House bill, a Senate bill. Sometimes the House bill makes it through. Sometimes it's the Senate bill. You factor in a Senate companion bill, or you factor in a bill that I carried on my side that I didn't have a companion bill for, just a Senate bill. Or sometimes you can't get a bill out of committee. So you learn how to find a bill to amend it on the floor. So if you factor all those in, I have managed to work 59 bills through the system in my 4 terms. In contrast, our current senator has passed 1 bill out of 136 that he's filed in 2 sessions. Conservative values without results is just rhetoric. And I think it's very important that we'll be able to take those values and apply them and use them for governing and come up with solutions that affect people's everyday lives, like y'all sitting in here. I believe that I can more effectively represent you on the other side of the Capitol. Okay, education. You guys know better than anybody. We have a complex system in Texas for our funding. We have 1,240 school districts across the state. The system has long been criticized as being outdated, and last year the Texas Supreme Court even ruled that even though it was constitutional, it was fundamentally flawed. This is our funding system I'm talking about. So when we discuss school finance, we're not talking about an insignificant amount of money either. You may not realize that nearly 3/4 of the Texas state budget is a combination of education and Medicaid. 3/4. Look at that pie. So you only have 1/4 that's left for everything else. Transportation, work security, parks, whatever you could think of that your tax dollars pay for, 1/4. So during both the regular session and special session, the House worked to not only increase the state's contribution to public education, but to also begin the very difficult job of restructuring the entire system. This restructure would have included less reliance on Robinhood and more on a recalculation of the formulas and weights that we are using in our funding system. I found when I went down my first session, it was very interesting. I went in when we had that huge shortfall. Y'all remember we had the recession and people were out of jobs and businesses were closing. We had a $27 billion shortfall we were trying to get through without raising taxes on people that no longer had jobs.
Say that last sentence again. How many?
$27 billion shortfall. That was during the recession in 2011, my first session. And on the state level, we have to balance our budget. Federal level, you know, they can print more money, they can borrow money, whatever. We don't do that at the state level. And it's hard. I mean, it's just like you have to do in your homes. But I remember at the time I was thinking we were looking at education, we cut everything across the board looking at education, and I went up to Dan Branch. Of course, at the time I didn't realize he was on the higher ed and not the regular public education. I said, explain to me this education funding. He said, oh, Cindy, there are about 5 people in this state that understand the education funding. I thought, why? Why is it so convoluted and so complex? Now that I've served a few teams, I understand. You know, you have something happen, you react. And it could be on public education, it could be on public safety, it can be on any kind of laws that we put into effect. So I realize when people come to me and say, this isn't working, we should fix this. My first question to my staff is, why do we have it there to start with? And what were we fixing before that if we fix might reverse or make worse? So anyway, it's very convoluted. So we need to look at those formulas. We need to figure out the weighting. I think we need to make it simpler. I think we need to push more of it down to the local level, to your local school boards that are elected, because what you need here in Hopkins County is different than what we need in Dallas County. It's different than what they need down in El Paso County. Texas is a huge state. I think we need to look more at local control over how those funds are used, and that means putting more money in the regular weighted average daily attendance money that goes to the kids. So the House passed House Bill 21 over to the Senate during the regular session, and that included an additional $1.5 billion for education. And it would have relieved some of the financial burden placed on school districts and our property owners. The Senate preferred to continue studying. And I talked about property owners. We've heard a lot about getting property tax reform. We will not have that happen until we get our school funding addressed, or at least start. More than half of your property taxes come from your school funds. So we need to get that logically fixed. We need to get it where it's more local as far as what you do, and where less of it's going to other school districts. That sounds like a really easy fix. Everything always does. It's going to be a very in-depth thing we're going to need to do. Now, while I voted to start tackling these issues now, we passed HB 21. It put some more money into our regular funding, took some of the weights out, and started that process. Senate didn't want to do that, so what we did, what they sent back to us was to form a commission on public school finance to spend the interim period to go into the issues and look at it. Now, and we passed that. And there were some other things on that bill as well. So what the commission is going to be doing, it's going to be made up of 13 members. It includes legislatures, someone from the State Board of Education, a classroom teacher, and individuals representing the business and the civic communities. The commission is supposed to be making recommendations. We want to get recommendations back from them, and specifically what we've asked for is the purpose of the public school finance system and the relationship between the state and the local funding. We've got to get that nailed down. The appropriate levels of local maintenance and operation, and interest in sinking tax fund effort necessary to implement a public school finance system that complies with the requirements in our state constitution that you all voted for years ago. And last but not least, but most importantly, is policy changes that they suggest on how we meet these mandates that our constitution has on us. And I'm really looking forward to what they get back with us. I wish we had gone ahead and taken the steps that the House had implemented and did this on top of it. But this is where we sit right now. I want to see the strategic ideas they come back with and how we can best start working around getting our public funding done on a more even basis. Now, aside from creating that commission, HB 21 also included $150 million in financial hardship grants for districts receiving ASETAR. I've got one of those districts in my district, my current district. $60 million for charter school facilities funding, $60 million to support public schools through the existing debt allotment, $41 million to eliminate the small district adjustment, The reason we want to do that is it unfairly reduces funding to rural schools that have a lower number of students and kind of an arbitrary geographical threshold. And $40 million to fund grant programs for services provided to our kids with autism and dyslexia. Can you all still hear me okay? Yes, ma'am. You can't, can you? Okay. I'm sorry. Keep doing that. That was probably a bunch of stuff that you may not have cared about anyway, but I always like to throw out what we did positive. Okay. Now, teacher retirement. I know that's something you guys are specifically interested in, but as the special session was beginning, many of you in our community began seeing difficult increases in your health insurance premiums and your deductibles. TRS Care was founded in 1986 on a pay-as-you-go basis with initial funding, state funding sufficient to maintain that program through the year 2000. Now, funding is now based on a combination of state funds, district funds, and member premiums. So, as health insurance costs have risen, we had all this national health care start, and I mean, it just kind of collided everything. It not only affected our Medicaid funding, it not only affected, like my husband works at a company, it's a private company, it affected private insurance. It had a big impact on any kind of governmental entity that was trying to provide insurance to their employees. They want to give good insurance. So as all that stuff was coming, it started really altering our insurance industry. The costs skyrocketed, your deductibles got higher, as did everybody's. And the cost got higher, which was the opposite effect of what they planned up north, but that's what we were dealing with. So as insurance has ridden across the country, we spent, since I've been in office, in 2011, we spent almost $3 billion trying to keep it level for y'all. And I think that was important. This year the program had faced a $1 billion shortfall. And so during the regular session, we budgeted over $500 million to keep those costs as low as possible. Unfortunately, that still faced y'all with an increase. So when we went back during the special session, I'm glad we were able to work with the Senate and find an additional $212 million during the special session. And that was rolled into that HB 21 that I mentioned earlier. So that was one reason that was voted for, even though it didn't accomplish everything the House wanted. We wanted to make sure that your insurance had some relief. I wasn't thrilled about the way we financed it. They financed that through a deferral of our Medicaid payments to pay for this. That made me uncomfortable because I know when we go back in a year, we're going to come up with the Medicaid shortfall. But that was how it came back from the Senate. We were at the end of where we could be. We wanted to make sure that you guys were taken care of, so we passed that. In closing, I want to just comment on the fact there's a big difference between confirming to the will of my colleagues and working with other members to find productive solutions. Conversation is important, and I hope you understand that's why I'm here today. I want to gather the most ideas I can to come up with solutions. And this conversation isn't always restricted to the legislature. I'm very, you may not have recognized in my talking points, but I am very engaged in my community. I go to stuff all the time. And people say, why are you here? Because I want to hear from you. As I mentioned earlier, I got a lot of my bills that I passed this last time by talking to people in my district and then bringing up to me things that didn't work. So I always want to make sure that I am here and I'm available to discuss with you. In a larger district, obviously in House District 113, I have 8 cities. Here we're talking 8 counties plus part of Dallas. So then you lean heavily on your staff. Oh, you know what? I'm so sorry. Andrew Hope, just stand up with your hand. My bad. This is my campaign manager. He's doing a great job, as Barbara mentioned earlier. But you do rely a lot on your staff. You have to, especially since this is a, quote, part-time job. But my office has an open door policy. And my staff is always available and responsive. And if they aren't, I want to hear it. And thank you, Barbara. Barbara mentioned, oh, he does such a great job. I know you don't always hear that. I want to hear if they're doing a good job. I want to hear if they're doing a bad job. I want to hear if I'm doing a good or bad job. Because I can't correct it if I don't know about it. I had participated in a committee with Dr. Borland. We call Dr. V in Mesquite. He's our superintendent there. For several months before session, we were looking for effective ways to incorporate the governor's pre-K initiative that we passed in 2015 with Mesquite ISD. That conversation led to a partnership between the schools and some of our private providers of pre-K that had the capacity to handle those students. We got together a group of people, we made some discussions, and we came up with a solution. That's why it's so important. I've also been active for several years now in Sunnyvale ISD, has a superintendent's roundtable. We meet quarterly. It includes parents, teachers, community leaders. I guess I'm included as a community leader, but when Doug Williams first asked me to join, he goes, "Oh, you're just a constituent here." And I said, "Okay, whatever. I love it." So I go and I get to listen to the students, not the students, the teachers talk, and how the things they face every day and how they work together. Now, Sunnyvale's a smaller school district, but how they work together to make sure that the kids are transitioning well, that things are being met. It's been very good for me. It's open discussion among the groups that look at the issues, innovative ideas that can work and be shared, communicating with the parents and the community. I'm not an educator, you guys are. Now, to that end, public education is very complex, and I know that, and funding is even more complex. I rely on the experts, as I call them, Dr. Bergman, Dr. Williams, your superintendents out here. I have their phone numbers in my cell. Better yet, they have my phone number in their cell. And I have been known to call them from the floor saying, especially when we do funding, usually when we're doing funding votes, what happens is you finally just get a run. And it's like, okay, where's SIS, where's Sunnyvale on there, where's Mesquite on there, where's Garland on there, where's the Hopkins schools on there? And you look and see how it's going to affect you because it's so convoluted what they're doing within the legislation that it's more difficult to understand. I have been known to call them from the floor and say, Doug Williams, acetar affects Sunnyvale. How is this vote on acetar affecting you? How's this going to affect my kids? And I call Mesquite and I say, okay, how's it going to affect you? And you have to find the sweet spot on how to vote. But I do that by reaching out to the people who can tell me. So I believe that's a big part of public service. And that's, excuse me, and that's what we are, is to facilitate discussion between stakeholders. I think that's important. And then coming up with positive ideas and ideas that work. Governing is coming up with solutions and not just the soundbite. And you know, we're very much, I mentioned this to somebody the other day, we're very much a soundbite society. Wouldn't y'all say that? You know, make America great again. You know, you look at it in regular marketing for products. Passing legislation, teaching kids is not a soundbite issue. It's something you have to very strategically do it informed, and it's very important that we look down into the meat of every single bill, we look at every single issue you have. I need to hear from all the stakeholders to see what we can do to improve your lives. With that, I would appreciate your vote. I'm here to answer any questions I can, and if I can't answer, I'm the type that will say I don't know and you find out. But just want to open up for questions. Yes, sir.
Can you tell me where District